Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Got a few stories to share with you in this latest Moon Lambo Hot Jam. Here's a headline from the Crypto Basic. Ripple CEO explains why U.S. institutions fail to use XRP even after winning against SEC. And this expands upon something that I was talking about in a video literally just yesterday. But then also, Brad Garlinghouse says, hey, Gensler's SEC, quite the political liability. And I'll explain exactly what he was talking about. And then there's this topic separately of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF getting approved. So here's a headline from Cointelegraph. Bitcoin ETFs will drive institutional adoption in 2024. Galaxy Digital's Mike Novogratz. But look, I think most of us understand that the high probability play here is that, yes, this is going to come to pass. But then the question is, what does this mean for our holdings? What does it mean for Bitcoin? What does it mean for altcoins? What does it mean for our XRP holdings? Well, I want to share with you perspective from my fellow XRP YouTuber, the Blockchain Backer, who is skeptical of exactly what this will result in for all of us. And I got to tell you, I pretty well agree with him, but I want to expand. It's not enough to just say, yes, there's a number of considerations here, but I do think he's pretty well hitting the nail on the head here. And so I wanted to kind of break that down and what it could mean for, whether it's Bitcoin or your altcoins, including XRP. Because even though if this is going to be good for Bitcoin, the spot Bitcoin ETF, okay, but I still stand firm in this idea that it's going to be even better for altcoins, even though it'll be indirectly better for altcoins. And that's just because there's more money flowing in ultimately into the crypto space. But is it actually good immediately? Is it good in the short term? Well, we'll be talking about that. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, and so Brad Garlinghouse was quoted as stating the following just the other day, and I don't really want to go through this whole article because I'm kind of piggybacking on something that I was covering literally just yesterday. But take a look at this. This is what Brad Garlinghouse had to say. They're like, look, even though you won the case, the United States government is still hostile towards crypto. And so, folks, he's talking about, on an institutional level, how this is viewed. Because even though there's clarity specifically for XRP, if your question is, what about further adoption for XRP, even as in Ripple's use case as a bridge currency? Well, again, when you're talking about institutions failing to adopt XRP specifically in the United States, although XRP, to be clear, broadly adopted outside the United States for Ripple's use case of XRP as a bridge currency, that keeps increasing. That is going the right direction. What about the United States? Okay, well, they think even if there's something specifically clear with XRP, there's still the opportunity in theory for appeal, and banks are historically about the most conservative, conservative firms out there, conservative businesses. And so that's why Brad Garlinghouse said, quote, they're like, look, even though you won the case, the United States government is still hostile towards crypto. The OCC, which is the Options Clearing Corporation, is hostile towards crypto. And until that changes, the banks in the United States are not going to engage meaningfully. Right, and so when you're talking about the clearing functions, things can flip on a dime. I mean, if you're talking about, in a particularly notable way, implementing XRP into your payment flows, is this the right time to do it? So I understand the hesitancy, but I firmly believe also all this gets worked out in the long run. And XRP is clearly here to stay, including for this use case. And in fact, as it turns out, and I think Brad Garlinghouse is absolutely right on this, this is harmful for the SEC. The SEC, as awful as they've been for we in the world of crypto, and specifically us here in the XRP community, the actions, the positions that they've taken, everything they're doing, it ends up being ultimately bad for them because they're wrong they're on the wrong side of history. They're wrong on the law. And as a result, they're not getting away with this stuff. And that's very clear at this point, which means it's bad for their actual agency, and it's bad for the political party that put Gensler in charge, ultimately, and that nominated him. And so there's this post from the Unusual Whales account on social media platform X with 1.5 million followers. And they simply wrote, the SEC, and this is from this morning, the SEC has opened talks with Grayscale over its bid for a spot Bitcoin ETF conversion per the block. Okay, and so that's fantastic. We already know that in the recent lawsuit with the SEC and Grayscale, the SEC lost. It was an absolute slaughter, not surprising. Now that doesn't mean it never did mean that for sure Grayscale would get approved for their spot Bitcoin ETF because they want to convert their Bitcoin trust into that product. But it certainly made the odds of that happening way, way, way higher, right? And so here's what Brad Garlinghouse had to say about this in the morning. It only took a few years to open talks. And folks, you gotta admit, that's pretty ridiculous. Years and years and years in this lawsuit and everything going on and all the filings for spot Bitcoin ETFs, just years just to have them talk, just to get to this point. But I think that they are at this point in time where they recognize that it's time to acquiesce because the writing's on the wall, folks. They're not going to continue to get away with this, even if they continue to refuse the approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs, which they could. I just don't think that's probable, but they could. Even if they do that, the courts are going to smack them down, and it's ultimately going to be forced. These products are going to exist. And so then Brad said, when you compare this to how many other countries engage proactively and constructively with industry, you truly begin to understand how much of a political liability Gensler's SEC has become. Right, and so you don't want to be on the wrong side of history once it's clear that you're on the losing side. So yes, they were fighting for what they wanted to fight for because they're just awful, awful humans. But now it's clear they're not going to get what they want. And so at some point you either shift or you're quite the political liability. So this is going to happen. But then the question is, what does it mean for us? So let's shift gears and get a little bit more into that. I want to share with you a perspective from the blockchain backer, and then I had a response to it because I think he's rather insightful on this. But I just want to kind of flesh out some thoughts on the topic. So here's a headline from Cointelegraph. Bitcoin ETFs will drive institutional adoption in 2024, Galaxy Digital's Mike Novogratz. Galaxy Digital founder Mike Novogratz has told investors in 2020 that 2024 will be headlined by institutional adoption of cryptocurrencies, which will be driven by the pending approval of Bitcoin spot exchange traded funds. During Galaxy Digital's third quarter earnings call on November 9th, Novogratz highlighted the firm's belief that approving several ETFs is now not a matter of if but when. The fund manager filed its spot Bitcoin and Ether ETF applications with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission in partnership with Invesco in Q3 2023. Investor sentiment has turned bullish in November 2023, with prominent ETF research analysts predicting the SEC will have approved 12 major spot Bitcoin ETF applications by January 2024. So what is this going to mean for us, though? I think most of us in the world of crypto believe this is coming much sooner than later. I place my bet. And maybe my first bet that it's only going to be BlackRock to start is wrong. Part of that's just because I think that the SEC is incredibly scummy. So maybe it's my second guess. Maybe a bunch get approved at once. And I'm starting to think perhaps that's more probable, but whatever. I don't know. It's always just been a for fun guess anyway. Either way, I've been in the camp of, yes, we're going to get this product much sooner than later. I've been like that for a long time, for months on end at this point probably. But again, like I keep saying, what will this or won't it mean for us as XRP holders, for us as holders of cryptocurrency in general? Well, there was this post from the blockchain backer last night, and he wrote, several Bitcoin financial products launched at major reversal points for Bitcoin's price, such as CME Bitcoin futures in 2017, Canada's Purpose Bitcoin ETF in 2021, BITO, B-I-T-O, ProShares Bitcoin ETF in 2021, and Bitty ProShares Short Bitcoin ETF in 2022. I think we're being set up again. And so the blockchain backer's perspective is that these are just narratives, just news stories, and that these are just for the typical retail speculators to make stupid decisions on, basically. And I'm not to put words in his mouth, but that's the sentiment that I've gotten from hearing his perspective on this. And I think broadly speaking, he's pretty well correct. To me, that pretty well sounds like pretty much hitting the nail on the head here. But it doesn't mean that a spot Bitcoin ETF wouldn't matter over a sufficient timeline. But look, I was here in 2017. I remember when the Bitcoin futures were approved. And when did that happen? I think it was like, pulling from memory here, but wasn't it a matter of like weeks before Bitcoin hit its top of close to $20,000 in 2017? It wasn't long before that. And so, yeah, Bitcoin ramped up, but did that do anything to spur it to 50 or 80 or $100,000 in 2017? No, it certainly didn't. But those, by the way, those narratives were alive and well back then. I was there. They were absolutely alive and well. Didn't happen, though. The product didn't do that. It's a thing, and maybe Bitcoin is going to ramp up about the same anyway, but either way, it spurred excitement to whatever degree. Okay, fine, but it's not something that was going to be sustainable. It's like, here's the people that are getting even more of a frenzy now that are operating in the world of crypto and speculating, making important financial decisions based on emotions, right? So there's more of that. Now, I would assume, in terms of ultimate impact, and I think this is pretty fair, that when you're talking about an ETF approved in the United States versus Canada, the one in the United States should be more impactful, right? Nothing against Canada. I'm sure there are Canadians listening now. And we love having you as America's hat. It's fantastic. You're looking good up there. But just from an economical standpoint, let's be real. Of course, in the this type of activity in the United States is going to be more substantial. And so even though I do agree with everything that the blockchain backer wrote right there, I want to expand upon it because I do still think that the ETF will matter over a longer period of time. And so I wrote the following. You certainly may be correct. My take in a nutshell is that approval of multiple spot Bitcoin ETFs will have a profound impact over a span of years and decades. But it's not the case that a wave of money from traditional finance flows into Bitcoin the day the news breaks. Your concerns are unquestionably valid. And so, folks, that's true. Like, even if you understand, even if you see the price of Bitcoin rocket on up the day that this news occurs, and it may, because people get in a frenzy about this stuff, that may be short-lived. It may be moving back to the downside. So either that's going to happen, I think, or you're not going to see a move up and it just goes to the downside. Though I think that's less probable. I think that people are going to feel the excitement. You're going to see it ramp up to some degree, and then you're going to see a retracement back onto the downside. And so understand that on the day this news breaks, it doesn't mean that all of the excuse me, let me take some water. I've been talking a lot. It doesn't mean that suddenly all of the money that could flow into Bitcoin, which will impact the actual supply of Bitcoin, it doesn't mean that on day one, all of that money actually flowed into Bitcoin. In fact, when the news breaks, none of it will have flowed into Bitcoin. Literally none of it. That's just the news that there's the approval. Then you got to launch all this stuff. And then, people in traditional finance, they have to learn that this is an option for them to purchase. And there is a real thing about an actual sales force. I have a sales background. I know that this is a real thing. People aren't just, if you open a business and just offer products, people aren't just going to come running to you for the product. You need to sell it. And so if it's on a retail side, maybe that means it's more marketing and advertisements. If it's on a business to business side, maybe you have an outside sales force, which is what more my background is career-wise. I understand. And so if you're talking about a sales force of over 100,000 Wall Street investment advisors pushing this product, that would have a profound impact over a longer period of time. But as far as the narrative of this is going to cause Bitcoin to moon and $100,000 plus immediately or quickly, I don't think that's particularly probable. But consider this also. If you think a Bitcoin spot ETF won't substantially impact the price of Bitcoin over a span of years and decades, then you'd have to believe that the Bitcoin ETF product will be a failure for firms like BlackRock that launch it. Because if it's a success, that means that tons of money from their clients are throwing money into the ETF, and then the likes of BlackRock and other firms that have these products, they'd have to purchase Bitcoin because it has to be actually backed. That's the point of this. You have to it's actually backed, which is different than futures market. So it will have that supply and demand impact. So if this is going to in any sort of meaningful way or any sort of detectable way impact the price of XRP, then it has to be successful for these firms. So I bet that it's successful. And so even if it's just a single-digit percentage increase in volume, even if it's a decade from now, whether it's 5% or whatever, it's still going to be something. You get a multiplier effect. Now realistically, there's a good chance it could be higher than that, but you get the concept that I'm sharing with you, right? And so I don't believe it will be the case that these products fail for the likes of BlackRock. I mean, the reason they're launching is because they can see there's demand from their customers. Their customers actually do want it. And so to think that this wouldn't, especially over a span of decades, have an impact on Bitcoin, I think would be a mistake. No, that's not what the blockchain backers say. I haven't heard him share his perspective on what this means over the long haul. I'm just saying I agree with them. I'm pretty well lockstep with them in terms of this being for the retailers out there, and the news is going to hit them, and they're going to feel emotions about it. I haven't heard him say anything about the long term, so I'm just expanding. These are just my thoughts. I'm not disagreeing with him in any sort of way. Just to be clear. Although if I did disagree, I'd just articulate it because I think it's fun to have civil discourse. But John Deaton on his Crypto Law YouTube channel, maybe it's a week or two ago, he had a guest on his channel who works in crypto finance on an institutional level, and he shared some numbers regarding the price impact on Bitcoin, what's expected, in terms of supply and demand. And I didn't, I didn't I'm not serving those numbers up in this video, and I didn't commit them to memory. But he just went through cold, hard numbers and facts and noted, even if you're pretty conservative in terms of your expectations of what would flow in once a bunch of Bitcoin spot ETFs get approval, it would have a meaningful impact on the price of Bitcoin over a longer period of time. And so he was of the mindset that perhaps it is the case that it's, you're going to see a big sell-off. Even he acknowledged that. So I think people who are thoughtful thinkers on the topic would acknowledge that at a minimum, it's very plausible that that's what's going to happen. You're going to see, even if you see a big jump up, you're going to see a pullback. But in terms of the amount of money actually flowing in, it's going to be incredible over a longer period of time. It's opening doors, and it also adds credibility to the entirety of the space. And there are other pros as well. But to me, what's most important, even though I'm a Bitcoin holder, I'm just not that excited about Bitcoin. It's not going to result in particularly life-changing wealth for me. I have a reasonable amount. I'm just saying relative to everything else I hold. And then you can consider the fact, like, most of the money, the quick money from Bitcoin, it's already been gotten, man. In terms of the multiplier effect, so much money has to flow into Bitcoin to get it to double, triple, quadruple. I'm just not counting on it for that. But as the crypto pie gets bigger because of stuff like this, it's going to be even more meaningful for our altcoins, including XRP. So that's a big part of why I'm particularly interested about this. And then somebody named Vicky Whale responded to me and wrote, "Buy the rumor," which is the first half of the phrase, "buy the rumor, sell the news," which just is the concept of you hear a rumor about an asset, so then you buy thinking that that's going to, because the price is about to go up, you hear the rumor. And then when the news happens that the rumor is true, after the price builds up, or maybe it's not true, then you sell. You sell at that particular point because it's not going to be writing up any further. Buy the rumor, sell the news. So Vicky Well wrote, "Buy the rumor," and I wrote in response, yeah, it could be a sell the news situation. Even if Bitcoin rallies upon news of the approval, pretty good chance it runs back down. That's why I'm more interested in the long-term implications. So I wanted to flesh that out a little bit. And then there's this. This is very fascinating. So we might get news sooner than later. I don't know if we will, but I want to share it with you that it's a possibility. From Cointelegraph, SEC's first window to approve all 12 spot Bitcoin ETFs to begin today. And this was an article from November 9th. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission could approve all 12 of the pending spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund applications within the next 8 days. Bloomberg ETF analysts James Seifert and Eric Bakunas wrote that starting from November 9th in the United States, the SEC has a window to approve all 12 spot Bitcoin ETF filings, including Grayscale's conversion of its GBTC trust product in the days leading up to November 17th, but stressed this was only a possibility. Then here you can see the quote from James Seifert, "New research note from me today. We still believe 90% chance by January 10th for spot Bitcoin ETF approvals, but if it comes earlier, we are entering a window where it could, where a wave of approval orders for current applications could occur." So then the piece continues. Delay orders were issued by the SEC for BlackRock, Bitwise, VanEck, WisdomTree, Invesco, Fidelity, and Valkyrie at the same time, Seifert wrote in a November 8th post on X. And he said, quote, "If the agency wants to allow all 12 filers to launch, as we believe, this is the first available window since Grayscale's court victory was affirmed." End quote. So we're in that window right now. Doesn't mean for sure it's going to happen, but it is an actual possibility. You could just wake up tomorrow or the next day or whatever, and then just have the news, and then we're going to have the fun of seeing what actually happens. And who knows? Since Bitcoin has jumped up, especially since that $28,000 mark, maybe some money has already plowed in. as a buy the rumor type of situation. We're all going to find out together what happens here. But knowing that, and this is a for sure thing, knowing that on the day that the news breaks, that doesn't mean that all of that money from traditional finance has entered Bitcoin, and that's a certainty. Knowing that's the case, any sort of rally we've seen, it's just people who are already in crypto getting in a frenzy, right? We know that. So that's why it's very reasonable to speculate, as the blockchain backer and I do as well, that it's one of those types of situations, and it's for the retail idiots out there. Basically, that's who the narrative's for, and retail falls for this stuff all the damn time. And so I'm only making the point that even though that is true, it is meaningful over a long period of time that this gets approved. It's good for Bitcoin markets. It's good for crypto markets. And not only that, it's going to open the floodgate for other ETFs. We already saw BlackRock news that they're going to be filing for their Ethereum spot ETF, and we'll see if that gets approved. And then there will be other ones, including for XRP at some unknown point in the future, I presume anyway. And so the fact that this would occur, it gets all of that in motion. And that's why I keep saying it's hard to overstate the degree over a long period of time. It's hard to overstate the degree to which this would be impactful, because it sets a lot of stuff in motion in addition to this. So it's a good time to be in crypto. We are so damn early. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.